a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel.
Hey there everyone, I'm back for another Easy Chair review for Movie Club Strikes Back, and this is a special Christmas edition. And I'm getting over the tail end of a cold, so if I sound a little strange, that's the reason why. This week's pick was a special celebrity pick by the Grinch, who chose 1966's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is a pretty apt pick, and I'm glad we get a chance to review it. So 1966's How the Grinch Stole Christmas is based off the Dr. Seuss novel of the same name, and he was actually involved a little bit with the production of this one, along with Chuck Jones, who produced and directed a lot of the Looney Tunes films. And you can kind of tell because even though the artwork is very derivative or very much based off of the Dr. Seuss illustrations in his book, the movie itself has very much kind of a Looney Tunes feel to it. So you can tell that Chuck Jones had some input into it, even though he stayed pretty much in line with the original book's tone and animation style. So even though this came out in 1966, it's been a holiday staple pretty much every year since then. And I think it's pretty easy to see why. And that's that it tells a pretty relevant story that we all like to focus on. Of course, the message being that Christmas isn't about all the stuff we get wrapped up in, no pun intended, you know, but the presents and wrapping the presents and giving the presents and getting the presents and sending out Christmas cards and getting the Christmas cards and all that stuff that we spend so much time worrying about, but really isn't what Christmas is all about. Even though it's a way of expressing Christmas in the Christmas spirit, there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just not what we should be focused about, and Christmas can be a lot simpler than we try and make it sometimes. And How the Grinch Stole Christmas gets right to the heart of that, and so again, it's easy to see why it's been a Christmas staple every year, because it's a good story that delves directly to that point. So choosing to watch the short animated film as opposed to the longer Ron Howard, Jim Carrey mess is particularly apt because although the live action one is entertaining in its own way, it kind of suffers from the very message it's trying to project across, which is, you know, don't get lost in the trappings. Because that 2.5 hour monstrosity is, you know, only about half hour of the message and 2 hours of Jim Carrey doing his stick. So, you know, between the two, I much prefer the short animated version, again, because it's charming, it's cute, and you get right to the point. So that's my review for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, short and sweet, just like the film itself. I'm not going to say if you haven't seen this one, go see this one, because let's face it, you've seen this one. Everybody has, and everybody should, because it's a great little Christmas film, and just a way to kind of get back and relax in the season. So I want to take a few minutes on the end of this to talk about something that's not a review of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, but it is in fact something about one of the other subjects I love, which is history. And it's going to tie in at the end, so just bear with me a few minutes while I circle this one around. Now, December 2014 is the 70-year anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. If you know your World War II history, or at least familiar with it, you know the Battle of the Bulge was the last great Nazi offensive during World War II. It took place during December, right around Christmas time, when everybody had kind of settled down. They weren't expecting any campaigning to take place during that bitter winter. But the Nazis decided they were going to take advantage of this and do one last push to hopefully break the Allied lines, maybe force a truce settlement. And in particular, in this battle, I want to talk about the role this one guy played. His name was Theodore Geisel. Now, Theodore Geisel was in his Middle Ages when the war broke out. And he had been working really as an advertising artist prior to the war. Had done a couple, you know, ads for like bug spray and that sort of thing. But then started doing political cartoons as we got closer and closer to the war. He felt very strongly against fascism, thought the Nazi Party was a serious threat and not just a European problem. There was a lot of concern of American isolationism, and he was speaking out against that. And when the war did break out, Geisel went ahead and enlisted. He accepted commission in the Army Signal Corps and went to work for a guy named Frank Capra, who was a very famous film director, directed such films as It's a Wonderful Life. And they put a propaganda unit together, and they did a bunch of instructional and propaganda videos movie films, animated series, that kind of thing, to instruct soldiers and to kind of let the folks at home know what was going on. And in December 1944, Ted Geisel was in Belgium. He ran into an old friend who was working in military intelligence who said, hey, why don't you go up to the front and kind of see how things are, you know, where the rubber meets the road, where the troops are in the trenches. And, you know, it's quiet right now, not a whole lot of action going on, it's relatively safe. You can see what's going on, and that'll help you out. So Ted Geisel took a Jeep and a couple MPs, and he went to this town called Bastogne. And he got there in the morning, and the Germans got there in the evening. Bastogne was completely surrounded. The 101st made a stand there, but the Nazis rolled over them and encircled the town, and everybody kind of had to stay there for quite a while the Nazis just bombarded it, and the front lines moved way past them. Ted Geisel and his squad of MPs were actually kind of cut off for a while. They spent about 3 days running around before they were rescued by a group of British soldiers. Ted Geisel had very poor eyesight. He never qualified with a weapon, and when they were running around, they basically gave him a rifle and said, shoot where we're shooting. And that's how he spent his Christmas in December 1944. Now, Ted Geisel survived the battle, and he survived the war and went home afterwards. What happened then was he went into what I think was really his first passion, which was writing children's books. He became one of the best-selling authors, not just of children's books, but of all time. We, of course, know Ted Geisel under his nom de plume of Dr. Seuss. So, in this review of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, I like to think, you know, it kind of ties into, you never know where you're going to find somebody doing something extraordinary. And, you know, Dr. Seuss spent December 1944 in one of the worst environments imaginable. But he came through it. So if you're having problems this Christmas, remember, it could be worse. So that's what I got to say about that. And to all my movie club friends and family, have a Merry Christmas.